For example, in climatologists, they are talking about the relationship between temperature and water evaporations. In sociological perspective, how the climate change impact on the social perspective in terms of human relations. Another biological issues for biodiversity problem in ecosystem services and ecosystem stock and flows, how they are affecting due to the climate change and the greenhouse gas emission. In the context, science, they are much focusing on the climate change perspective with various technological advance and models, everything. But finally, how the climate change, the greenhouse gas emission impact on the humans, that is ultimate issue at present. So each and every country, they have to assess their own development and growth in terms of economics. So economist role is very important in the climate change policy, or designing the policy, or architecture of the report, and national, international, local, and regional level. For example, here as an economic researcher, so economics role, what is economic role in the climate change policy? The first, I can say here, within the social science discipline, within the social science discipline, economics is the, major discipline, because of economists, they can design the policy, how to implement the policy, what are the policy issues, especially the economic theory designing the very good policies, especially in this context of climate change. I'm giving the two or three important economic policies here in the first slide. The distributional effects. The distributional effects, for example, which countries should have held responsibility for reducing the greenhouse gas emission in terms of climate change. So many developing countries, they are criticizing, they are putting blaming to the developing countries, because developing countries, they are the responsible for the climate change, because you people, they are emitting more compared than developed countries. But the developed countries, we are claiming the developed countries, they are the more responsible for the climate change, because they are the industrialized countries. So in terms of CO2 emission, the per capita CO2 emission, developed countries, they are the more contribution. In, for example, in India, 2.3, 2.4, third or fourth level in the global greenhouse gas emissions. So the distributional effect, how the distributional effect in terms of the CHG emissions, how they are assessing the distributions in terms of CO2 emissions. So economists, they are designing the policies, how distribution effect is happening. They can identify for the policy implications. The second aspect is the market-based environmental policy instruments. For example, many people, they are discussing about carbon tax, incentives, economic incentives, how controlling the CO2 emissions. You people, I think, had about the carbon trade, carbon tax, incentives. These are the market-based economic instruments. So we are going to discuss about that kind of issue also. How economic theory, especially the economic instrument, working for the climate change policies. So these are the some important roles. For example, in the science, this is a major contribution to the climate change solutions through the various models and prediction of the future CO2 emissions. And the economist role is what kind of, especially in the cost perspective, cost benefit analysis, and how much we need for the, the finance in terms of developed countries. Already they agreed for finance and technology providing to the developing countries in terms of with the CO2, the conference of parties. So the economics role is very important here, but the designing the policy, that is very important. So now you understand what is the economic role in the climate change policies. Even the economists also creating the number of issues. So why the climate change is rising since from the pre-industrial level. So based on the economic and production, consumption, and distributions. So in the economics, they calling it the overproduction, overconsumption of the natural resources, or overutilization of the resources. So creating the more emissions. So these are some kind of economic things. So in this first lecture, we are going to discuss about the sorry. First lecture, we are going to discuss about the very basic concept, theories and case studies. For example, first we are going to talk about externality and market failure. So here, I mean, economist, I'm audible. Hello?
Sir, you're audible, but you are a bit, voice is a little bit low, sir.
Sorry?
You're audible, sir, but you're a bit, your voice is a bit low.
Okay. Maybe some technical issue here.
Now it's better, sir. Now it's better.
Now it's better. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So I mean the first this I mean the economic concept here, the externality and market failure. It's a very basic the theoretical foundation in economics of climate change. Many people they know is here what is the relation between economics and climate change here. For example, here 2006 the name of Nicholas Stern, 2006 London School of Economics, the Cambridge University professor. He developed the models of economics of climate change. He estimated the cost due to the impact of climate change, how much affecting the global GDP for especially developing countries also. So I will show you what is the status. I mean, what is the picture of Indian perspective. So the externality and market failure, this is the basic theoretical foundation. Even Nicholas Stern, he took in his presentations. So here, the first concept is externality and market failure. The second economic aspect is the cost-benefit analysis, as you know very well. As each and every policy, it is very important cost and benefit aspects. For example, adaptation to climate change. If any programs, for example, a national action plan on climate change, how they designing, how much we need money for the implementation of national action plan on climate change. That is very important. So we are going to discuss about the second aspect on cost and benefit, adaptation and mitigation perspective in international and Indian perspective. Third economic aspect is economic instrument and theory. So as I said in the first slide of economic instrument, it is very important for controlling CO2 emissions. Some are successful in the developed countries, even developing countries also. Some areas implementation issues there. We will discuss about how implementing the economic instrument in the climate change perspective with the theoretical aspects. So theory is very important for each and every subject, especially in the economic perspective. So here we are going to discuss about two type of theories. One theory is the big win externality. So for example, tax, how implementing at the national level. So carbon tax. So that is one theory. The second theory is of course assigning property rights. So the transaction cost is involved for the both side, especially in the big win perspective. There is number of issues there, merit and demerits. Then second theory, quotient property rights in theory without the transaction cost. With assigning property rights, with both parties, the compromise. So the economic instrument and theory, how controlling the CO2 emissions. The fourth perspective, the macroeconomic impact of, especially in the GDP, because of so now we are in the pandemic situation, how the GDP is going down. So already we are in the minus the condition. So how especially the climate change impact on the GDP at the global level and Indian perspective also with the various sectors, for example, agriculture, the forestry, fisheries. This is a macroeconomic impact. The finally global and Indian perspective with the case studies, how the economics of climate change, especially for some studies, the global level and Indian level experience. So here, first, I want to give some very basic example because this program is interdisciplinary participants they are participating. I hope everything. I don't want to take much time, and even I don't want to put more equations and methodologies. I mean, economic methodology. So very basic concept we are going to discuss about in this lecture. For example, if each and every things. Externality is there. What is the externality? How relating to the climate change? For example, the externality here, if one person production and the consumption, how impact on the another person welfare. That is very important. If no, if anybody's they have the questions or any issue, you can ask, because of I'm not able to see in my screen and your things. That is a problem. So I'm talking in front of system only with, with the input of PPT. So anyone can ask any questions. Meanwhile, I mean, you can stop and ask the question. Okay. Hello.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Okay. So the first concept is the market failure and externality. What is the externality? So especially the negative externality. For example, you and me. So today my lecture, how impact on your welfare. Okay, so my production. I mean my production. How impact on your consumption. So whether it's a positive way or negative way, that is very important. So economists they talk about the externality. Here the two type of externality is there. One is the positive externality, another is a negative externality. For example, in the context of climate change, so your industry they are producing a number of goods and services to the society for human purpose. So the production, how impact on the environment as a positive way, or how impact on the negative way. So the production there is two aspect. One is the positive way, another is a negative way. So the positive aspect, people they are getting goods from the industries, they are consuming, they are getting satisfaction. That is a human welfare. So another aspect is a negative externality. For example, when they producing the goods and services, they are also emitting the emissions. That emissions they are creating the problem in the society. So the negative externality cause an unpreparable and inefficient situation of the market failure. So most of the goods and services, they are producing number of CO2 emission in the globe. That CO2 emission they are not estimated as a cost perspective. So the CO2 emission they are creating negative externality. That is a negative CHG emissions. There is a positive way. There is a negative way. So here we are talking about the negative externality. So there is a first concept for economics of climate change. Even the American economist, even Nicholas Stern, he got Nobel Prize for economics of climate change in 2018, 2018 or 2019. That is for the economics of climate change. These people, the group of experts and the group of researchers in economics, they start the economics of climate change from the negative externality. So this is a basic concept, because what is the relation between economics and climate change? So this slide actually it's very basic understanding about the externality. So the externality, why is happening the externality? Because of there is lack of information about how reducing the emissions between the stakeholders. There is lack of network, innovation and incentives. So that is the problem. So how correct the externality? How reducing the CO2 emission through the economics instrument, through the economic theory? So this is a basic concept. So the externality is a basic concept in the climate change. I mean economics of climate change. So the second term. So what is the basic understanding? So what are the relation between climate change and economics? So I said early, Nicholas Stern, he started his work early 2000. He completed the work 2006. They call economics of climate change. Stern review, Nicholas Stern review. You can actually, this is a free PDF copy. You can download it anywhere. So it is very basic mantra. It's very basic. I mean, this is a Bible of I mean economics of climate change, because of the economics of climate change started 1990s with an ecologist. I mean, started 1990s with the Nobel laureate Northeast William. After 2006, the people of the economic researcher they are fully understanding about the relationship between economics and climate change. So, what is findings of the economics of climate change? There are the six findings, the major six findings. I don't want to put much about the report. This is a very basic understanding concept. So, we started from the externality. The second thing, the relationship between economics and climate change. So his first finding about the impacts of climate change on the economic cost. So if you talk about the climate change in economics, people they suddenly come to the cost perspective. So what is the cost? I mean, what are the cost I lose in my country in terms of GDP? So the climate change, the global recognized a big environmental problem. How the climate change will affect the basic elements of human life. because of day-to-day life, for example, so water scarcity, the food production, health and environment. So there is number of issues there. So this is a direct relation to the climate change in economics. The first, they focused about the very basic level, basic human livelihood. So climate change, how impact on the human livelihood in terms of cost. So the second thing, so you see the African countries, there is number of reports and articles they published in the at the global level. Here, even of Nature and Science and Lancet, manywhere. So hundreds of millions of people would suffer the hunger, shortage, and coastal flooding at the, due to the climate change and the global warming. So how the global country they are responding to the vulnerable groups, that is very basic, very basic issue, the policy question to the global level. So the Stern, especially he estimated the global GDP. So his estimation 5% global GDP for each year will impact due to the climate change. The estimation damage could also rise 20% GDP or more if they are not implementing any policy at the local level, national level, international level. Because of there is another issue, reducing the CO2 emissions from 25% to the 5%. That is not also successful due to some various political and economic reasons. So we can discuss whenever the necessary times will come in this presentation. So here the first concept is the impact of climate change on the economic cost. So the economic cost is very important. So he estimated based on the various discount rate. We will discuss about the discount rate also. So 5% of the global GDP for each year for the global GDP. But he estimated for all countries also, especially the developing countries like India and China, Brazil, the BRIC countries, and developed countries also. They especially focusing on developed countries because of they are putting a lot of pressure due to the CO2 emissions. So this is the very basic concept for the cost aspect. The second aspect, climate change would have very serious impact on the growth and development. For example, if any country, India, how they are assessing the economic performance, because of the GDP is one of the measurement, very basic measurement, whether my country is going on sustainable growth or not. I mean, development or growth way for 5% GDP, 6% GDP, 10% GDP. Here, the climate change, if they are not implementing any local policy or national policy or international policy. For example, here he predicted 2035. If they are not implementing anything, the global average temperature will rise as a 2%. Already we are reaching nearly in the 2%. This thing will also will improve if anything is not working in terms of the conference of parties, policies, and implementation of the climate change. So the world must lead to the major change in the human geography due to the economic policy. That is very important. His final argument: we need the global common policy for the climate change. So climate change is one of the global common problem. So we need the global common agreement. So otherwise, the world poor, they will suffer more due to the climate change. As you know very well, how they are suffering the poor in terms of access to water, food, health, and other environmental natural resources. So here, the third point, the cost stabilizing the climate are significant but manageable. Still is manageable. Actually, the manageable means before 2005 up to 2010, it's manageable. So if the delay would be dangerous and much more costly. To stabilize the 450 parts per million CO2, if we delay, the opportunity to stabilize at 550 parts per billion CO2 emissions. So already the fifth assessment report, IPCC, Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, already the predicted number of issues there. So we are going to reach 500 or 550 parts per million CO2 emissions if they are not if they are not implementing any policy, as I mentioned earlier. So, what are the fourth concept? Action on climate change is required across all countries. I said early, world takes a responsibility for absolute cuts in emission of 60 to 80%. Sorry, not 805. This is 80%. We put wrongly by 2050. So by the 2050, most of the near sea countries, for example, West Bengal and Bangladesh and Maldives, they are going to face many issues because of rise in sea levels. if they are not taking any actions. So the strong argument is, so we need two, I mean, the stern argument, they have two important point. One is the cost wise, second is the policy. So cost they estimated for each countries. The second is the policy. So the argument, economic related to the climate change. So cost, what are the cost, damages cost due to the climate change? He estimated. The second is that we need the strong policy. So that's why reason Stern review more than 10 citation at the global level. I mean, before 2015. So now it's more than 15,000 citations. This is economics of climate change. Not only for the economist researcher, even the science researcher also, they are referring the Stone Action Plan on climate change. So the action, how the action could implement here for the carbon market, low carbon strategy, and clean development mechanisms. As you people, as a researcher, you know very well how carbon market are working in the developing countries and developed countries. How the low carbon technologies, for example, green growth and sustainable development, green growth technologies, then clean development mechanisms. So these are some suggestions given by Nicholas Stern. So what is basic elements? For example, here he suggested five type of urgent policy needs. So emission trading, technology cooperation, action to reduce deforestation, and adaptation to the climate change. So these are the some very basic findings of Nicholas of climate change. Nicholas Stern, I mean Stern review of economics of climate change. So here, the first point is externality with stern climate change. The second economic aspect is cost benefit analysis. As you know very well here, the cost benefit analysis is very important for adapting adaptation to climate change. For example, here the cost benefit analysis to calculate optimal long-term policy choose for climate. So still, some very few countries they have the climate policies. For example, of Australia, they have the climate policy. Italy, they have the climate policy. So very few developed countries they have the climate policies. So each and every countries they should implement the climate policy at their local level, at least I mean the regional level and the national level. That's why the reason still why we are not succeeding for the climate policies at the global level. There is lack of coordination between the country, among the countries, among the states. So the cost benefit analysis is one of the tool for assessing impact of climate change in terms of cost. So the cost benefit analysis, I think, assess to climate change adaptation policies, especially in the forest sector, agriculture sector, and fishery sectors. Because of the cost benefit analysis, they can understand, they can assess what I mean, how much cost we need. So what are the benefits based on the adaptation strategies when they implement? Because of present we are involving in government of Karnataka as a, I mean, state action on climate change. We are the coming 29th we have CM meeting. So we are going to give our policy suggestion to the government, how they are going to adapt, I mean, how they are going to implement adaptation to climate change at the state level. So in the context of cost benefit analysis, a reference to the climate change. So again, I come to the Stern review because of in economics, without Stern review, there is no any economic climate change. So I took only the three point here. One is the monetary valuation of human life. The second is the discounting rate. The third is the risk and uncertainty. I'm audible? Hello?
Yes, sir, you are audible.
Yeah, because there is no any response from your side. That's the reason I'm little concerned. I'm audible, na?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. So the monetary valuation of human life. For example, what is the relation between monetary valuation and the human life? For example, in economics, we are talking about the value of statistical life. So what is our value for our lives? So in American economist Kusvisi, they developed the theory value of statistical life. For example, in the context of climate change, how climate change impact on the human life in the context of valuations. For example, here in developing countries, there is no much focusing on value of statistical life because of the value of statistical life. we are estimating, I mean, as a economic researcher, based on the personal income. So the personal income differ from developed country to the developing countries. The personal income, per capita personal income, is lower than developed countries. Because of developing countries, we have less personal income. So if a person working in the industry in the developing countries, maximum they can get 1 lakh for a per month. This is too much money. So depends upon the income. So the IPCC, they given the monetary valuation we have to estimate for each person, those who are working in the country, I mean those who are working in the industries. So they put 1 million based on income, 1 million US dollar. If a person they want to secure their life, if whenever they working in the industries, so whenever working in a very home industries or home areas, especially in the how the climate change affect the human life. So there is some methodological issue also is there. So if once people they want to implement value of statistical life, they have to assess cost benefit analysis of the humans. It's a group of humans as the developing countries and developed countries. So the monetary valuation, before implementing the monetary valuation, we have to assess cost benefit analysis. So the IPCC, they have the common methodology for value of statistical life. That is a one relation before implementing adaptation to the climate change as the human life. The second is the discounting rate. So discounting rate as economic, it is very important before assigning any policy. So the economists they are assessing what are the discount rate is suitable for the climate policy. What are the discount? What percentage discount rate suitable for agriculture production? So what percentage suitable for forest timber protections? So based on the discount rate, each and every country they are framing the economic policy, especially to the climate change. For example, the Stone review, he talked about the future consumption of the people. So here, the future consumption also is uncertainty. So as an economist, I am arguing future consumption is very important. At the same time, future consumption is uncertainty. So his discount rate to the climate change, he put 1.4%. So discount rate is like of interest rate. For example, you people, I mean, people are purchasing some goods and services in the market. For example, um, some shopping mall. Why they are putting the discount? Why they are putting the discount? So that is a very simple logic. If they put the low discount rate, they will get the low benefit. They put the high discount rate, then they will get the high benefits, both side, production and consumption side. So in the terms of climate change, they put actually Stone review, they put 1.4% discount rate. But the group of economists, they are not agree. Why you put the 1.4% of discount rate? Because of the Stern climate change. Stern, he concerned about the future generations. As economists, we are arguing future generation is uncertainty. Because of the present generation is very important. So future generation is uncertainty. So future generation welfare and satisfaction may increase or decrease, depends upon the situations. So there is some argument before implementing cost benefit analysis in the adaptation strategy, they have to assess the what percentage of discount rate they are assigning for the climate change policy. So still India also they have the problem how implement the discount rate once they introduce the climate policy. So we are working on it. So third, risk and uncertainty. Third aspect. So once one the climate change adaptation. No, you people know very well. The adaptation to the climate change is very important measure. I mean, very important prevention in the climate change topic. So people, when they introduce the climate change policies, they have to look on adaptation to the climate change. How, for example, I said earlier in my beginning of our the lecture. So national action plan on climate change, national water mission, national agriculture mission. So for example, MG Narega, if Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act, before designing the program, that is also one type of adaptation strategy, because of they are reducing they are improving the water storage at the local level, as well as livelihood for the peoples. That is a one adaptation programs. Laterally, they converted as a adaptation program. So this is a poverty elevation program. Laterally, they announced as a adaptation to climate change program. So the third here, risk and uncertainty. Once you design the policy based on the cost benefit analysis, they have to see the risk and uncertainty. Especially the climate change will affect the economic growth. Definitely, each and every country they have to agree how the economy impact due to the climate change. So this is common to everyone. So once whenever they design in the cost benefit analysis through the adaptation strategies, they have to look the three perspective. So what is the economics role? So what is economist role? The designing the climate change policy. Now you people maybe understand. So these are some basic concepts we are discussing at present. So first we discussed about the externality theory concept. Second is the cost benefit analysis, especially with the climate change, the adaptation strategies. So the third perspective, economic instrument and the theory. Are you understand my concept?
Yes, sir.
Uh, are you understand my concept now?
Yes.
Hello?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Can you hear us?
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yes,
Yes,
sir. We can hear you.
yes, we can hear.
Yes, but there is no any response from your side. That's the reason. Because maybe my second lecture, because now I'm I can sign it my another laptop, my office laptop. So my personal laptop now it's ready. So my second lecture actually we will see each other things, because you can see my face now.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You
Yes,
can
sir.
see you.
We can see.
But I cannot. I'm not able to see my face. That is the issue. Okay, anyway.
Oh,
So
that's
now
an error with the platform, sir. It occurs sometimes and it fixes itself.
yes,
Sometimes.
okay. I think second lecture we can we see the face. So the third economic aspect, I want to discuss with you regarding economic instrument theory. So I said earlier, externality theory, especially the big tax. So carbon tax is very a big instrument at the global level. Once no the developed countries, even the IPCC, Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, actually they want to discuss about the carbon tax, especially the big tax. So economists they put in the table in front of IPCC committee. So IPCC committee also they recommended to many countries. Even Australia they are implemented carbon tax, and Italy they are implemented carbon tax, and US also they are implemented carbon tax, and UK also implemented the carbon tax. France, why it is not successful in the developing countries? I will discuss with in the theoretical perspective, the economic theory perspective. So the economic instrument here, I mean the economic literature, we have two type of instrument. One is the command and control, the voluntary instruments. The second is a market-based instrument. So command and control instrument here, the energy efficiency and standard. So once the government, the local government, or national government, they want to introduce a energy policy. So how they designing the energy policy? So economic instrument is very important, because economists they should design the energy efficiency in terms of cost and the benefits. So we have to use energy efficiency at optimal level, and satisfy of the electricity for, I mean, reaching the electricity. So the energy efficiency standard, for example, I'm giving here. So there is number of issues based on nuclear energy and thermal energy, then solar energy. So each and every energy sectors we need the very basic economic instrument. So economists they must also involve in the designing the energy policies in terms of climate change. So second is the product prohibitions. So the production possibility curve here. No, they, for example, a company they want to give his production as a maximum level. They want to produce their production as a maximum level. But at the same time, consumer they want to consume their maximum. So the producer they want to produce maximum, right? So the consumer they want to consume maximum. So each and everywhere, this is a in economist they are talking about the neoclassical economics. So the neoclassical economics perspective. So how the economics economist role, how economics they are very clever. So economists they are involving in the production side, economics they are involving in the consumption side. So they want to maximize the consumption, they want to maximize the productions. So that is also economic instrument. How applicable in the climate change? So at the same time, So the industry for the government, for example, the government of India, they want to encourage the production in terms of economic production through the economist. You see the consumption in the market, even the public, they want to consume the more. For example, Diwali consumption. So each and everyone, they want to consume more. They want to explore their racks. Not even also consider about the qualities. Oh, that is a human satisfaction. So human wants is unlimited. Economists, they can say maybe any economist they are participating in the program. Hello, hello,
Can you hear us,
hello.
sir?
Any economist they participate in the program? Any social science?
No,
No,
sir.
sir. No, sir.
Not
Okay, okay.
actually.
So which backgrounds you people? I'm sorry, I'm not able to interact with you.
Sir, we have energy and environment, biotechnology, biology,
Okay.
plant science.
Okay, plant science. Okay, okay. So even if energy background students also, they should understand what type of economic instrument they are using. That is very basic knowledge. This is not. That's the reason I told. I don't want to put more any. Equations and methods and things. So I will show somewhere in my second lecture about the vulnerability to climate change. How I instructed the in vulnerability index for Karnataka. So I will show you my second things. So the market-based instrument, you people also can read. It is very easy. It is public access. So how the economic instrument they are working in the climate change policies. So first is the command and control method. The second is a market-based instrument. The market-based instrument, for example, coir industry, they want to produce their maximum rope. So they can get some incentives, some charges from the government, local government, but they are not polluting much to the environment. So this is the environmental polluted industry. They must implement some kind of market-based instrument because of they want to reduce the pollution. So the climate change, the economic instrument, how working in the climate change policies, how working in the reducing CO2 emissions. So these are some very basic concepts, economic theory. So here, as another theory, so there is number of diagrams, there is number of equations in there. Professor Chandrasekharan, he told Bala, their background from the biology, energy, and another plant science. That's the reason I'm not able to put some basic diagram. What is the demand and the supply? What are the pricing? So marginal cost. I don't want to show you all the things. So here the basic theory, each and every human being we can understand as a researcher. You are the researcher. We are the researcher. You should understand. For example, most of the Nobel laureate, even in science, they are arguing about the economics of climate change now. So we should understand the concept. That is a interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary perspective on climate change. So why climate policy is not successful at the global level, local level, and national level? I am arguing there is lack of interdisciplinary and transdisciplinary research. So how much research we produce in Madurai Kamaraj University, climate change and transdisciplinary approach, climate change and interdisciplinary approach. So we people, we have to integrate, we have to collaborate. What is a climate change and various perspective. So that is very important. That kind of, outcome that is helpful to the local policymaker in the Madurai. So it is very important. Where is we are lacking here because of lack of transdisciplinary and multidisciplinary approach. So here the theory, the first theory I'm talking about the regulating economic externality. So the climate change is the global market failure. There is externality. You people know very well. So my consumption or my production, how impact on your welfare in terms of cost. It may cost, it may welfare, it may etc. etc. So it may your research. So for example, one train track, how impact on the agriculture production, nearby train track agricultural land. That is also theory. That is also working the plant science. That is also working the biology. So that is also externality. So in terms of climate change, so the production of production of goods and services, a company, how impact on the welfare of the society without bearing the cost. So the Bigu is one of the neoclassical economists in the Cambridge University. Bigu and Marshall, they proposed the economics of welfare to deal with this by a system of tax and subsidies. So we are paying tax to the government as income tax. The tax goes to the somewhere. Okay, whether it's environmental policy, whether it's energy policy. So the government, they have to distribute the tax. So how you see that now the economics working for the climate change. So the economic tax working for the plant science, the economic tax working for the science and technology. So science and technology, we are getting project from the central government. So that money through the tax. So why not through the environmental tax? Why not through the big tax? So it is not successful in the developing countries because of there is no any coordinations, because the developing countries institutional setup is different from the developed countries, because developed countries already they implemented big tax. It's anywhere. So the second argument is the proceeds would be devoted to compensating those injured. For example, here A, the producing the goods and services, B, they are affecting based on their goods and services. So A can compensate, B should agree for their compensation. So those people they are injured, so they should get some compensation from the benefit people. So these are the some very basic theoretical things. So here the marginal, social marginal cost is involving. So social marginal cost here actually the social marginal cost, this is for the social benefits. So the social benefits, it is very important. With climate change, how create the social benefits based on the theory. So another perspective, government intervention can correct the problem of externality. So how correct the climate change problem for CO2 emissions through the economics as a government intervention? The government, they should interfere through the tax and regulations. They can correct the climate change externality. This is a this is a economic role. So again, another things as we discussed in the previous slide. So market also can use to set it how they distribute the cost, reducing the air pollution, or excess the carbon emission, and burden of the bearing some of the health issues also. So how the theory they are developing, economic theory they developing for reducing the CO2 emissions at the global level. They can implement, actually this theory we can implement as a Madurai level, we can implement as the Tamil Nadu level, we can implement as the India level, we can implement as the international level. So those who are getting, for example, how the developing countries and developed countries, they are agreeing, they are accepted based on the theory. Here, the developed country already they agreed. The developed country they should give finance and technology to the developing countries. Because of developing countries, they are highly affected due to the climate change. Because of they are emitting much, so they agreed for 2012 they should give each and every year 100 billion US dollar to the developing countries. Till more than 10 years, we received only 30 billion trillion dollars. So developing countries they failed to provide finance and technology to the developing countries. That is the climate change. The international climate change policy is a failure. So economists should work again. How to redesign the policy? So already they agreed for the 100 billion dollars. So we received to developing countries only $30 billion. Even technology also they are not transferred to the developing countries. So these are the very basic things. So theory already they suggested the developing countries because of they are the producer, we are also producer in terms of producing CO2 emission. They are the more contribution. They are the high contribution. They should give money and technology to the developing countries. So each and every year, you know very well. So conference of party is going on without any successful. I think after take over the Biden of US president, they want to agree again of climate change policy conference of parties. It will be successful. The global researcher, especially environmental researchers, economists, they believe again come back. The US come back to the this agreement. So theory how involving in the economics of climate change in terms of externality. So first theory, actually, we talked about the BIHU, the theory of externality. the second theory, the allocation of property rights with the trading. For example, the first theory, they involved the so much of cost involving the AC Bigu. Excuse me, please, a minute. Excuse me. Hello.
Yes, sir.
Yes, please a minute. Be here.
Yes, sure, sure.
Sorry for the disturbance, because so 1:30 we have one more lecture. I have to participate on Switzerland lecture, so that's why they reminded me whether I'm in office or my home. Sorry for the disturbance. Huh? So the first theory, now I'm audible, na?
Audible, sir. No worries.
Yeah, the first theory.
Sir, you're audible.
Sorry. Hello.
You are audible,
Hello.
sir. Another participant conveyed that you are audible.
Hello.
Can you hear us,
Hello.
sir?
Okay,
Hello?
okay. Can I continue now?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Sure, sir.
Yeah, the second theory, they talked about the cause theorem. Cause theorem, this is a day-to-day activity we can implement here. What is the cause theorem? The cause, Ronald Coase is a Nobel laureate. He got Nobel Prize for his theory. So he don't know about the climate change actually for 1960s. So the climate change issue, economics of climate change issue, they started of 1990s. So here the allocation of the property rights with the trading. Here, for example, Coase is the student of this Bigu. Bigu is neoclassical economics in the context of economics. So Coase is the student of Bigu. So he criticized his own teacher, own guide. So he did PhD from the Coase, Bigu, Arthur Cecil Bigu. So what is his argument? He criticized, what is his argument? The most efficient way to use a resource is to assign ownership. It does not matter who is the owner. For example, for one property is there, that property owner is A, the B is the neighbor the property. So the A, they are disturbing the B. So the B and A, they have to assign property in terms of compromise. If he disturbing his land, because of the B, they want to graze here own goats in this inland. Are you understand? A and B here. A is the owner of land. B is the shepherd. So he want to graze his goats in the A land. So without compromise, the problem will come. So the property ownership will come. This is my property. Why you are using my property without my permission? So they have to compromise. There is no cost involving. There is only understanding. So the Bigu, they talked about the tax. So Coase theorem, they talked about the property rights. So here there is no cost, there is cost. So how the climate change involving in the Coase theorem, how involving in the climate change things, we have to understand the climate change is a global common problem. Without cost, we can agree, we can put an agreement between developing countries and developed countries. So that is also successful. Even IPCC, they suggested Coase theorem is one of the economic theory successful for many developed countries. For example, France and the US, they are successful for the Coase theorem in the climate change perspective. They are understanding reducing the transboundary CO2 emission. Okay. Now I am coming to another perspective. So how economics is it's a major discipline in the social science. So a major subject in social science discipline. So the climate change impact on the macroeconomic level in terms of GDP. As I said earlier, each and every country, they want to perform high economic growth. They want to perform, for example, 20% GDP. They want to perform 10% GDP, more than double digit. So as you know very well how our economy is going on at present. So here, So, to 2018, the former economic advisor, Professor Arvind Subramanian, he made a very excellent economic survey to the government, previous government. When he was the chief economic advisor, we invited him for the lecture in my institute. So we discussed about the climate change, how impact on the macroeconomic in terms of agriculture, in terms of forestry, in terms of biodiversity, in terms of fisheries. So biodiversity, forestry providing major livelihood to the millions of tribals, millions of forest dependent communities. So how climate change impact and if it rise the temperature, how the forest production will come, how the non-timber forest product. So the non-timber forest product will reduce due to the CO2 emissions, due to the temperature rise, due to the forest fire. So how the CO2 emission impact on the macroeconomy in terms of GDP, in terms of cost. For example, here I took the data from our old data set. You can see there in left side, Latin American countries, they have minus GDP. Some part of Latin America, especially in the Brazil, they are minus also. Then some part of African countries, see there minus 2 to minus 1.5, and even minus 2 to minus 1, the negative GDP due to the climate change. The Russia and US, Canada, and other developing countries, they are the positive impact on the climate change. This is actually the data from the 2018. So new data, the new World Bank data, they will release soon. So how the climate change impact on the various sectors, as I said, of agriculture production, contribution to the GDP. So forest and biodiversity production, contribution to the GDP, fish production, contribution to the GDP. So the macroeconomic impact is very basic issue due to the climate change. So if once the 2%, once the 2% of global warming, the 2% of the global warming, so this kind of impact will come. So more than 2%. So definitely the global GDP is will become minus. That is each and every economist they are arguing. So the macroeconomic impact of the global level. So the global GDP is impact due to the climate change. So some another. So I took this thing from American Economic Review, one of the topmost journal in the economics discipline. So economic impact of climate change. Charles Dole is one of the famous environmental economists. They estimated at the global level, for example, some of the regions, for example, Europe, Asia, otherwise, I mean, within the regions, Eastern Europe and Russia, how in 2006, they hope he studied for if on 2.5% of the temperature, what will happen in the GDP, the minus 0.5 to 2.7. So another studies by Radson and Madison, warming if 1%, 0.40, I mean 0.4 in South Asia. So these are some economic impact of the climate change. So how they designing the economic policies, how they estimated the economic impact of the climate change. So these are the some helpful findings for architecting policy at the national level, at the global level, at the regional level also. For example, the Northwest and Boyer, Northwest and Young, they are the global, Northwest William is a global climate change expert. He got Nobel Prize for climate change models, rise and rise models. That is a computable general equilibrium model. He developed the model for all sectors. So he predicted, the future impact of the climate change. That's the reason he got the Nobel Prize. So these are some global studies, how economic impact of the climate change. So here actually, this diagram also is very famous in the economics of climate change. The left side, the vertical side, welfare impact of the GDPs. Welfare impact is plus and minus. For example, top 5%, 2.5%, 0, then minus level, negative, in the positive or negative. So once 0.5% of the global warming, what will happen of global GDP. 1%, what will happen in the GDP? 1.5% global warming, 2% of the global warming, 2.5% of the global warming. What will happen in the economic welfare? Because finally, if science, whether it's a science discipline or social science discipline, we have to focus on the society welfare, societal benefits through the policies. So why we are working for the chemist researcher for the society, the chemical and physical reactions, how impact on the human health for the CO2 emissions. So we have to integrate. That's the reason one of the I read long back in the science journal. 10 more than 10 science researcher, more than 10 social science researcher, they published an article, the global vulnerable planet. It is very excellent articles. So science and social science, how working in the climate change policies, how designing the climate change policies. Even IPCC also, they suggested to the global countries, global research, they have to they have to work interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary approach. So alone economics cannot work for reducing the GDP or implementing successful economic policy and the climate change. So we have to work together at the global level. That's the reason I criticized, actually beginning, that is not criticism. This is a major research issue at the global level. And some part of global already they worked, because when I was visited in Stanford University in USA, I met that Nobel laureate Nicholas Stern. He was presenting the paper. So the conference output, actually they want to integrate science and social science as a multidisciplinary and a transdisciplinary approach. How reduce, but our aim is the reduce the global climate change for the future generation, for the present generations. How future generation will happen? That is interdisciplinary approach. Actually, that is a intergenerational well-being, intergenerational equity for the future generation. So the conference, I mean, the winter school itself, the climate change, past, present, and the future. So how the present climate change policy, what are the future economic impact? So the climate change, due to the climate change. So at least we should avoid for the future harms. At least we should avoid for the future economic impact. We need the human welfare. We need the good economic things. We need the good society. For so these are the some kind of I mean suggestion from the IPCC. So here, yes, economic impact of the climate change as a welfare perspective. Then climate change and the economic model. Actually, I'm always taking you today's economic class like this. Are you feel this is very difficult? Hello?
It is pretty new to us, sir. So that
Okay.
is,
It is not much difficult, because of this is a very, I put a very basic concept. So I will show you my second lecture only the vulnerability index, how I constructed the index. So here the economic, I mean climate change and the economic model. So the socio-economic model first, actually this paper published in Social Cost of Carbon. This paper published in the Nature Climate Change. Anyone can actually access the Nature Climate Change paper. This is free access, free downloaded access in some part of universities. I know Marikama University, they have access in the Nature through the library. So climate change, what are the various models we are using, like of physics? They are physics researcher, they are predicting the future CO2 emission. Chemist, they are predicting the physical and chemical reaction, how increasing the global CO2 emission in the future. Here, as an economist, they suggested four models. I mean, I took only the four models. There is number of models. First model is the socio-economic model. So we have to incorporate all the socio-economic variable. Whether this model can applicable, it may applicable in local level, regional level, national level, and international level. Because of, we need the data. So we need the very basic socio-economic data, especially for the mitigation and adaptation purpose. So that is the socio-economic models. The second model is a climate model. For example, they defined the climate model, fifth coupled model intercomparison project, CMIPF. This model is very famous. Our IIC Indian Institute of Science, we are working in this model to estimate the baseline warning method. So we can predict the future global climate, CO2 emissions, especially for India. For example, in Karnataka, it will be a very huge problem in the future if they are not implementing the adaptation policy. Because coming 29th, we are going to discuss about the climate change adaptation policies based on the state action plan on climate change. So there is a climate model. So how they are using the various type of socio-economic, then the climate model only they are using for the environmental related variables, environmental related components. The third model is damage models because of the damage cost method. This is also involving the cost. Nicholas Stein, what I said earlier, Stone economics of climate change. The time, damage model is very basic and very famous model for assessing the economics of climate change at the local, national, international level. So there is a macroeconomic estimation based on the both the primary and the secondary data. Then discounting model. So the discounting model is a social cost of carbon. Again, I come to the economic perspective, social cost of carbon. For example, in this paper, they estimated India is the topmost global social cost of carbon. What is social cost of carbon here? So how much economic damages per ton of CO2 emission? We can estimate social cost of carbon. So the researcher they estimated $86 per ton of releasing CO2 emission at the national level. So US is the second. So India is the topmost. So India is the very facing the very serious issue based on the climate change. So still we are not working much. So we have to work much through the interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary approach. Because of the Ministry of Forest and Environment, we are calling some meetings, some conferences. They want to introduce this kind of concept, social cost of carbon, how the science people, they understand the social cost of carbon. So, the science, for example, biology background students, they can assess the nature of plants, the importance of the plants, the importance of the ecosystems. The social cost of carbon, economist, we can work if once increasing the CO2 emission, what will happen to the plants? Because of each and every trees, they are producing number of ecosystem services. For example, provisioning services, regulating services, cultural services. So, for example, the soil erosion, how to control the soil erosion, how to control the water damages. So, the social cost of carbon, once you estimate the social cost of carbon, then it will be very easy for climate change policy. So, economist role is vital. It is very important for designing climate change policy. That is my argument. So here I said the previous slide, social cost of carbon. Here, the social cost of carbon presents the economic cost associated with the climate change or climate benefits, whether it's a positive externality or negative externality that result from the emission of the additional tons of CO2 emission. So I said here, this is actually social cost of carbon. Now it's a common all countries. They have to introduce, they have to estimate for social cost of carbon per ton carbon release. This is a commonly employed metric of expected economic damage. So this is the latest figure. So I said this is this paper published in the Nature Climate Change 2018. Ricky, they are the very excellent. We have to agree. They estimated very excellent way through all the economic methodology. They applied all economic methodology. So I said 86% per ton CO2 emission per ton CO2 emission, 86% of social cost of carbon. How much we are releasing the CO2 emission in India? As you know very well, in terms of millions. So per capita, it's not the problem. The total CO2 emission. So how India they are facing the issue due to the climate change? How economists they are working for the climate change policy, designing the climate change policy. So US come as its second, 48% per ton because of their climate change policy, the national climate change policy. So the last, not the last, one of the COP conference, they introduced the concept of common but different responsibilities. CO2 emission is a common, but we are putting the different responsibilities. That is a very basic issue. We need the global common agreement, as I said earlier. So social cost of carbon is also one of the basic economic instrument. This is for it is helpful to the designing the policy, the climate change policies. So actually, many people they want to show this as a model. this is the result. This is already published in the IPCC. This is a national action on climate change. But what is reality is happening? The practically, how should reduce the CO2 emission? The practically, we need the local level policy implementations. So once you estimate the economics of climate change in Madurai at the local level, for example, some taluk, the Usulambatti taluk, you can otherwise some part I forgot actually. So where is more agricultural productions? Where is huge ecological resources is there? So in Alagar Malay areas, the ecosystem services they providing number of ecosystem services. So most of the communities they are depending on the ecosystem services. There is a carbon sequestration also. So the ecosystem services, the stock of ecosystem services also itself reduced due to the increasing CO2 emissions. So that is also very important. So we need the very basic analysis for how much stock is there, the carbon sequestration. The carbon sequestration, the economics of carbon. Actually, one of my recent completed study funded by Ministry of Human Resource Development as a science, social science site, Indian Council of Social and Research. We completed the research. I estimated nearly 30 trillion dollar worth in the Western Ghats in Karnataka. The economics of carbon sequestrations. 30 trillion US dollar I estimated. So this study we are going to implement at the Western Ghats level in Karnataka. So we need the economic estimation. So some people, they think also economics is a very difficult subject. If you see there in Western countries, in Stanford and Cambridge and London School of Economics, the economics is topmost subject. So economics also working in the science. Economics also working in the energy. Economics also working. For example, in my major research area, economics of ecosystem services. We estimated economic value for the ecosystem services. Since the last 5 years, we are working. We are expecting one paper from the nature sustainability soon. We hope publish our work with Leeds University of UK. So how we are working science and social science? Why not in the climate change? As within the universities, within the state, we have to work together for the climate change perspective. So that kind of output it is helping to the society. That kind of output it is helping to the local policymakers. So this is a social cost of carbon. Yeah, now I come to the economics of climate change in India. So how much time will take now for finishing the first lecture? Hello?
I have, you can complete it anytime now, sir, or else we can take 15 more minutes, sir.
Now?
Yes, sir. No, no, sorry, sir. No, you have 15 more minutes to complete, sir. It is flexible, sir. No worries.
Yes, okay, yeah, sure. 15 more minutes is there now. So I will complete maybe 10 minutes because we can discuss something about your question, something thing, there's a very basic concept.
Yes,
so,
sure.
Sorry?
Yes, sir, yes, sir.
Yeah, sure. So economics of climate change in Indian context, because of I talked about the global perspective. So what the Indian context here? India is a major leading developing economy at the global level. Now the political, they are a very strong political perspective, as you know very well. But economics is very weak. We have to agree. Why economics is very weak? The strong political background, but it's a very weak economic policy. I argue with the government officials because of last week we had a meeting with principal secretaries in the government of Karnataka. So most of the IAS officers they were sitting. I put the complaint to the government because of the climate policy adaptation to the climate change. They want to implement at the local level. Okay, so they have to assess the damages of climate change. For example, for example, a village, the village they highly affected due to the flood and drought. So we have to assess what are the socio-economic and environmental impact due to the flood, the particular village. Then, if once they assess the economic cost, then the cost they have to show into the government based on the cost, like a cost benefit analysis, like economic assessment. Then the local policymaker they have to read the document. After that, they have to designing the policy. So the problem is the local policy maker, they are not understanding the practical situations. Okay, they want to implement some 100 crores in the particular district. What basis? Economists, they have to estimate the cost benefit analysis for the things they want to construct, as you know very well, because I'm sitting in um, my no the place I'm now actually I'm basic from Tamil Nadu, so now I settled here, so I'm sitting in the place, so they involving me for constructing the Meghdadu. How can I give the things? So they asking for what is ecological cost. So they actually approaching the expert time. So I can give the for I have to give the very balance, whether for the my state or my the settled state. So we are troubling the things. I mean, we are in this kind of situation. So what is the ecological cost? What is the economic impact? So for the economic of climate change in India, so most of the JNU professors and IIT professors, they are working in economics of climate change. We work together on many projects for the National Action Plan on Climate Change. They're designing 8 missions: agriculture, biodiversity, forestry, energy, based on our output. So India is both major greenhouse gas emitter and one of the most vulnerable countries in the world. Actually, we published one paper in the Lancet Planetary Health. It is only one and a half page. So I argue climate change, famine, low-income community, challenge to the sustainable development goal at the global countries. So 2018 we published the article that is a free access, you know very well. So I argue the climate change totally missing in the vulnerable groups. So who are the most vulnerable group at the global level? So global level, those who are not able to adopt their climate change strategy, they cannot be able to adapt it. Their own adaptation is failure because due to the finance and technology. So India is already experiencing this climate change impact due to the water scarcity, heat waves, flood and drought associated with the negative consequences in the health and livelihood. So our economy is going down. So Nicholas Stern also, in his report, he estimated economics of climate change for India, it will be negative. If they are not implementing properly the policy, it will be negative. So the World Bank 2013 estimated the cost of climate change, pollution and environmental damages, especially the climate change and pollution, 5.7%, 80 billion US dollar every year. You see who will compensate for this thing? Who are the responsible for the things? So they estimated the global, I mean, estimated for the India. So these are the economic issues are there. So the second part, the most important impact of the climate change in Indian perspective, especially the economic aspects. So the agriculture. Again, I come to the economic survey of India. The former economic advisor to the PM, Professor Aravind Subramanian, he made a very excellent economic survey for 2008 economic survey. He used all science and social science brain in this chapter, climate change in agriculture chapter. I mean, those who are working in the biological background, people, they can also read what that there is no any I mean difficult economic in concept, or there is no any difficult economic mathematical things. That's the reason I'm not using much mathematical things. I will use very simple basic concept in my next lecture. So the agriculture. So agriculture based country. Our country is agriculture based country. How the climate change impact on the agriculture production? First, we have to fulfill our food security for the family. Then come to the sufficient of the food productions. So now the first level also we cannot reach now. There is lot of food insecurity. Why I argue the Lancet paper, the urban poor is also, it's one of the questionable in India. So good that the former government of Tamil Nadu, I mean the present government of Tamil Nadu, the previous term, they introduced the Amma canteen. So within I mean less than $1, they can complete their whole day in terms of morning breakfast, afternoon lunch, and evening dinner. So less than $1. So I argue. So what are the some short-term solution that is adaptation in the urban climate issue? So now the flood, the Madras, they are facing every year the flooding. So how they are facing the flooding, how they are managing adaptation to climate change, especially for the food security for the urban poor. So these are some basic issues in the agriculture field. So actually, the economic survey, they argue high input and high output agriculture will be negatively affected. Even the demand for food and other products will be raised. So annual agriculture income in the range 15% to 18% on average will reduce in future. So these are the major issue at present. So how the climate change impact on agriculture? It is a very excellent research issue. You can take the secondary data also. You can approach the some economist. You can use the models and science model and social science model apply in the agriculture field and how impact on the climate change. Prediction also is there. Predictive model is also there. I told the IAC and ourselves we are working in the agriculture and climate change. Second is water. Water is another basic issue, as you know very well. The melting of glacier, I mean Himalayan glacier, its impact on the north side's river now is going and very dry. Sometimes the flood will come. So the water is another big issue. So the World Bank and the Food and Agriculture Organization, they warned how climate change rise the water problem, especially in India. India is topmost country in terms of facing water issue, water scarcity. So where is the solution? We don't know because of water. I mean, as you said, Tamil, வாட்டருக்காக வந்து நிறைய தேர்ட் வேர்ல்டு வார்லாம் வரும்னு சொல்லி we discussed jokingly sometimes. So that is also serious issue. So here is another big issue. What as a big developing countries like India, so climate change, how creating the inequality in the society. So this is economic concept. So how measure the inequalities? For example, the flood affected states. I mean, the flood affected district in Nagapattinam, Tanjavur, and Thiruvarur. Sometimes the Kaja cyclone is highly affected because now also they are adapting to the today or tomorrow some kind of cyclone is coming to Tamil Nadu. So now they are little alert. So this alert for whom? For human beings and the agriculture protection or water protections. So we need the proper thing. So in terms of the inequality, those who are affected due to the climate change, whether it's flood, drought, or any other climate events, uncertainty climate events. So the distribution of the rehabilitations, distribution of the relief fund is total inequality distribution in terms of the distribution. It's happening. India is the very topmost country. Is access to the basic level. Those who are affected with the climate change. For example, tsunami it was one of the biggest environmental, social, and economic issue in our state. So still the economic impact of tsunami is more, but still many people are not receiving the very basic necessary. It's very basic resources. So how climate change creating inequality in terms of access to the resources. For example, for rich families, poor families. Next, actually, another lecture, it will be very interesting regarding on the climate change impact on vulnerable communities, vulnerable groups. So the inequality is very big issue. So now we are doing the project. Already we have completed one project funded by government of Karnataka. So another project given to me. So I'm assessing inequality in terms of climate change. That is helping to the implementation of adaptation strategy to the district level. Because of 30 district like Tamil Nadu, now we estimated vulnerability assessment for the 30 district. And I did the things. I submitted that chapter to the state action plan on climate change. So the highly appreciated for vulnerability index for the 30 district. So inequality is one of the common indicator we used. So next, energy and migration. So energy access. So there is a lot of electricity problem is there in the um, in our state due to the lack of water and rain, because Kaveri, they have to release the water, Metro Dam, they have to regeneration everything. That is another issue, socio political and economic issue related to the climate change. Then migration is one of the big issue. Migration. So migration, billions of people at the global level, they are migrating due to the climate change. For example, why people are migrating Mexico to the US, why people are migrating Tamil Nadu to Karnataka, why people are migrating from Bihar to Tamil Nadu and Karnataka, the construction worker. So drought and flood, that is another issue. So migration, this is a very critical policy problem is migration also. So these are the small, discussion. Actually, it's very important discussion about the economics of climate change in Indian perspective. In terms of cost, already we discussed it, 5.7%. So these are the some issues in economic perspective and things. So what are the adaptation to climate change in Indian context here? What type of things? What is our, some policy recommendations here? Adaptation to climate change in India in 2000's National Action Plan on Climate Change launched 2008 exactly. So National Action Plan on Climate Change, it is working 40 to 50% for in agriculture, in water and biodiversity, all the things. The second program is state level vulnerability and vulnerability and risk levels. So the Ministry of Environment and Forest, they already given to the all government, each and every state, they have to assess the vulnerability index for the district level, state level and district level. That is helpful to for the national policies. So because of the research argument to the government of India, also all the research argument to the government of India. So we have to assess vulnerability of climate change in the context of economic damages also. What are the socio-environmental economic damages? It will be helpful to the adopt climate change policy in the parliament. That is our ultimate aim actually. It will be happen maybe within a few years. So now we are working on it now. So another thing is, even for example, Karnataka, we have already submitted the draft to the uh, assembly for climate change bill. So 2021 or 22, it may implement the 2020, 21 bill on climate change in Karnataka. That is state level. So we need for each and every state, they have the, they should have climate change policy and bills. So third thing, developing testing and adaptation methods. So I said earlier, without actually assessing economic impact, they want to implement the adaptation strategy. So first step, we have to implement. We have to assess the economic assessment of the climate change in various sectors, agriculture, etc., etc. So the another implications, climate proofing of public investment and the rural development program. For example, here the finance ministry, they are arguing for 14th finance commissions. And even 13th finance commission, actually we argue with the government of India. We presented some papers. We given our comments on the chapter in the 14th finance commissions. So climate change, disaster and finance. So, who will give the finance for the climate change, whether it's the state government or the central government? So that is another issue. So the public investment is very less. So we have to improve the public investment on the national level, state level and national level for the climate research. So then human capacity development. So we have to improve the human capacity, human capabilities for adopting the climate change strategies and technologies. Then finally, state level action plan on climate change. We have to assess because of each and every year they have to submit the state action level on climate change plans. We have to update about the state action level on climate change. So what are the another issues there? So urgently we need to focus on this thing. For example, if in Madurai district, what are the basic issue in the climate change? For example, so we have to analyze where is the finance for the climate change research, whether the Madurai municipality, they can provide some kind of issue for the provide some kind of finance facility for climate change research at the district level or the village level. So we have to strengthen the finance. That is a big policy issue, climate change finance. So what type of technologies they are using at the local level and regional level, especially for the green type of technologies, green growth. So another issue, distributional issue, I said earlier. So most of the affected areas, they are not getting the equal distribution in the conduct of relief. So another is inequality. So the final one is the global cooperations. We need the global common agreement for releasing, I mean, for reducing the CO2 emissions. So these are some policy issues. So thank you for your cooperation for the first lecture. Now I'm stopping on the first lecture. So I'm expecting something from you, your side. If any questions, any doubt, please interact with me. Hello,
Sir,
participant.
there are some questions for you on the chat box, sir.
Very good. Thank you. Please tell me. Please ask me. They posted the question, or
Yes, sir, in the chat box. You can click the chat box, or I can read it to you, sir. Give me a second.
yeah, okay. Please, please you ask one by one, because of I'm not able to visible the video. Some issue in the video, I
Okay,
think.
sir. Okay, sir. Okay.
Yeah, you can ask one by one.
Mr. Muralidharan has asked a question.
Yes, please.
Sir, I'll paraphrase it, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, that we expect 2 degrees increase in mean global temperature due to greenhouse gases rise by
Yeah.
2035. What mitigation policies are framed by the union government?
Yes.
Could you mention any one practically feasible decision or step that could help control greenhouse gases emission relevant to the Indian scenario?
Okay. Good. It is very good question, because of the 2035 year mentioned by Nicholas Stern. You can also download the free access resources. Nicholas Stern review on climate change. If government of India, I mean the state level, if they are not implementing any mitigation policies, no, the problem is actually India is too much poor in the mitigations, because that is our argument to the government, because they are not much concerned about the mitigations. They want to adopt the adaptation to the climate change things. So mitigation is one of the important things. As I said early, 2011 or 12, under the Parikh, I mean Jodi Parikh and Kirit Parikh, the committee set up by the Congress government. So the mitigation strategy, especially for the energy in the transportation level. So energy and the transportation, they want to reformulate the policy for transportation and the CO2 emissions. So India is the topmost energy and the CO2 energy. I mean the CO2 emission we are releasing in the transportation sectors. So we need the proper policy for the transportation sector. Actually, that committee they recommended to the government of India. So most of the government officials also, they should travel in the public vehicles. That is the one basic recommendations. That is also was failure due to the public participation or public cooperations. That is one point. And the second point is that, as you know very well, the Delhi government they introduced the odd number and even number things. That is also one of the mitigation strategy. That was also little helpful. But here actually we need the very basic things. The human they have to understand for their own problem, because the moral situation, the behavioral economics, I mean, as I said, no sorry, I can say the behavioral issue of our human approaches. So they called it the behavioral economics. So how our behavior, because of for each person, some rich people they have 4 car. For the people, they were their home only the 2 persons. Those CO2 emission with the particular person's CO2 emissions, it will be more compared than other people's. So there is also inequalities there in the context of CO2 emission. So we need the strong mitigation policies. So the government they have to adopt strongly the mitigation policies at the union level. For example, the Delhi they introduced the odd number, even number. Why not in the Tamil Nadu? Why not in the Tamil Nadu? Where is the problem? Is it the cost problem? There is no any much issues. No, it's the policy they can introduce. Even as you know very well, the Sunitha Narayan, the Center for Science and Environment, they called for us for the climate green fund. That is also failure in this country. So we need the strong assessment. We need the strong economic assessment in the energy sector. That's why reason why we are failing the mitigation policies. So each and every state government they should analyze their own sectors. For example, there is no any data for state-wise data, for time series data, for assessing the CO2 emission, for assessing the economics of climate change and agriculture sector, economics of climate change or transportation sector. For example, train, how much they are reducing, how much they are emitting the CO2 emissions, the flight, how much they are reducing. So good that the COVID came November 2018, I mean now November 2019. So last 1 year, tentatively our CO2 emission level little reduced. That is good for the social and environment and economic feasibilities. So state government, they are much responsible. They have to introduce them some basic economic instrument at the state level. They have to encourage eco-friendly technologies. They have to decrease. I mean, they should not agree. They should not give any permission for the environmental pollutant industries at least 2 to 3 years. Then we can assess what is our climate change. I mean, CO2 emission. For example, state level CO2 emission, we don't have much data. For example, 2010, how much emitting CO2 for Tamil Nadu, how much for Karnataka, maybe 1 or 2 years. We need the data. That is the basic problem in developing countries. We have to create the data for the CO2 emissions at the sector level. Then only we have to identify which sector is more vulnerable due to the climate change. So which sectors we need more mitigation policies, whether it's a transport. That's the reason they are asking for energy and transportation sector at the national level. But some state like Delhi, they implemented the transportation and for odd number and even number. Okay, next.
There's another statement by Dr. Kannan Madhyanathan.
Okay.
Excellent and invigorating presentation, sir. Sir, more awareness is needed on the CC to reach mass.
Climate change
to reach the masses.
Yes, yeah. It is very good actually. The problem is here, my basic argument to the government of Karnataka, because of it is, I mean, I got access. I got access means here, I can talk to the minister because of they put me as a member in the state action plan on climate change. So it my feelings, not only my feelings, the whole Karnataka's feeling. For example, I'm sitting in the area. So even if you go there, Western Ghats in the tribal areas, they don't know what is the adaptation to the climate. They don't know the climate change. So we have to give the very basic awareness to the climate change. So the media and the public, it is very important. For example, I'm giving you one example. So solid waste management is one of the basic environmental issue for each and every city. Whether we are succeeding in the efficient management solid waste management policy, efficient the solid waste management policy, no. Why? Because of lack of people participations. So people cooperation is very important. That's the reason public-private, I mean public-people participation, not public-private participation, public-people participation. So 3P is very important. So they should understand what is the impact will come. So the problem is for environmental policy or environmental regulation, implementation in India, it is very poor compared to developed countries. Because of developed countries, they put tax and regulations. If you throw the garbage in the road, they will catch you. They will put some fine to you. But what will happen in our countries? What will happen in Madurai? So who is responsible? So women, they are the responsible. So they have to understand what is the problem. That is the one side for the people side. I'm not criticizing because of people they know, people they serious when they are sick. When we are going to the doctor, once we get the sick, then we are going to the doctor. No, that's why the reason I'm giving one example. For example, as an environmental economist, me working as environmental perspective, so I installed RO water in my home. So many people they want to drink a tasty and healthy water. Some people they want to drink in the healthy taste water. That's all. But in my perception, what is my analysis? So I want to avoid my health damages in the future. You got my point. So I want to avoid my health damages in future. If once I drink the good water or hot water, I should not be in the trouble in the future as a researcher perspective. So I want to install here. That is, I want to avoid the future health cost. So that is the concern. So we need the people participation is the one. The second is the institutional responsibility, institutional setup, whether it's a Madri government or Tamil Nadu government or India government. We need the strong policy and strong regulations. And the people they are aware why how people they are watching the IPL things, whether is awareness people or unawareness people. A to Z in our family, people are sitting there. No, they are watching exactly 7 o'clock or 7:30. How they aware the cricket? So they should aware for the future generation. They are not they are not actually concerned about the future generations. Once they facing the problem, so you go in the African countries, you see there how much they are sacrificing, how much they are facing the problem due to the water. So we need the basic awareness. There is lack of understanding about the climate change. So the government side, they have to give the proper information through the social media. Then particularly each and every human being, they should understand. That is very important things. So the climate change, but it will take a lot of time. So now why today and tomorrow people are much concerned. I called my father because my father is standing in sitting in Pudukkottai district. Just now I called before 10 o'clock. What you are preparing for adaptation to climate change. So I am the researcher. My parents they are illiterate. So I given to them the suggestion, you have to adopt yourself. At least you can avoid some damages. ஸோ அவங்க வந்து அந்த கம்பி வச்சு கட்டுறாங்க, இது பண்ணுறாங்க, அது பண்ணுறாங்கன்றது தட் இஸ் அ லோக்கல் ட்ரெடிஷ்னல் நாலேஜ். ஸோ லோக்கல் ட்ரெடிஷ்னல் நாலேஜ் தே ஆர் மிஸ்ஸிங் இன் தி இம்ப்ளிமெண்டேஷன் ஆஃப் கிளைமேட் சேஞ்ச் at the like national level, at the local level. That's why reason it's our argument. We should implement traditional knowledge in the technology in my one of the very basic argument. So it should integrate into the climate policies. It will be helpful to the successful policy. Are you okay?